This student is having trouble because Jesus didn't have any busts or coins in his lifetime. But watch as Cliff debunks this.
How many busts do we have of Jesus?
How many busts?
We have busts of Tiberius Caesar that show his face, give details like his ears, his eyes, that date within his lifetime. We have writings from Suetonius and Tacitus that describe what he looked like. How many busts do we have of Jesus?
We don't have any busts from Jesus.
Okay, so we don't have any busts. How many coins do we have that has Jesus' face on it?
We don't have any.
Have we found Jesus' house? Like we have found 3 of Tiberius' palaces?
Haven't found Jesus' house.
Now, we had the writing of Velleius Paterculus, who wrote within Tiberius' lifetime. When is the earliest account that discusses Jesus?
Within 20 years of his lifetime.
Which account is this?
Galatians and 1 Corinthians.
Okay, so Paul. So, when authors like, when people wrote the Gospels, people like Paul wrote about Jesus, did they draw upon a written record or did they draw upon oral tradition?
Both.
What written records did they draw upon?
Well, I think it's fairly obvious that Matthew, Mark, Luke used some notes in writing their Gospels.
But we know that the accounts of Tiberius Caesar were written by people like Suetonius, like Tacitus.
Only
they
10.
Drew upon the Acts of the
Only
Senate.
10.
They drew upon, well, beyond this, though.
42 wrote about Christ. Only 10 wrote about Tiberius Caesar.
Let's look at quality rather than quantity. Suetonius wrote an entire biography. We have...
No, you started the quantity thing with your bust thing. You started the quantity thing. I didn't.
That is quality, too.
No. No, you don't know who made those busts. Those busts don't tell you much of anything.
So when we have multiple busts that all look the same, that all date within his lifetime, and we have authors who write about what he looked like.
Sure, historical knowledge is not based on busts.
But physical evidence contributes to historical knowledge. When we don't have any physical evidence, there's less to know about.
Busts are not significant historical evidence.
Busts are not significant historical evidence. If you have a depiction of a guy from within his lifetime, that's pretty good evidence he existed.
You don't know that that's true.
So the sculptors were just making up imaginary,
They do it all the time.
They made a bust of an
Michelangelo made quite a sculpture of Christ on Mary's lap. It doesn't mean that's what Jesus looked like.
Yeah, but that was made way after Jesus. I'm talking about within Tiberius' lifetime. There were busts made of him that show what he looked like. There were busts made of every Roman emperor. That is good historical evidence of what that person was like.
No, it's the written records of Tiberius Caesar that give us the certainty that Tiberius Caesar really was a Roman emperor.
Caesar was sucking in air of this earth. There were people making statues of him. And the statues look similar. They're found all over the Roman world.
I'm simply saying I would never stand out here and say, the reason you all should believe that Jesus was an historical person is because we have a bust from the 1st century of Jesus. I'm sorry.
No, if you had a bust
you're the one who said it, not me.
No, if you had a bust from within Jesus' lifetime, if you have multiple busts and coins and physical descriptions in the literary evidence, and they all point to the same thing.
All right. Well, I believe Tiberius Caesar existed, obviously, but I also believe Jesus clearly was an historical person.